Hey, Vibe Tribe, Dr. Barrett. I want to chat with you about cold and flu season. They say there's a cold and flu season. It's not, in my world, cold and flu season. It's sugar season. It's Halloween season. It's Thanksgiving season. It's Christmas season, where all we do is eat poorly, and that wreaks havoc on our immune system. So, yeah, you're going to get stuff. So, what are you going to do? Is there stuff you can take? Well, in general, my setting is you can't trump Pop-Tarts with fish oil. You've heard me say that many times. but that said, there are some things that mitigate inflammation if things get away on you. This was one of the main things about COVID, by the way. The inflammation pathways went crazy. The leukotriene pathways, which is a chemical pathway for inflammation, goes crazy on some people. If you can keep that under control with things like curcumin, antioxidants to help your body fight the fight, and also fish oil. I'm pointing over there because we keep it over there in the refrigerator where it's cold and it won't oxidize easily. If you have it in your house, you should keep it in the refrigerator because it's dark in the refrigerator and it's cold, so it doesn't oxidize easily. So those are main tools. Now, in addition to that, as you know, vitamin D, and we dedicated a whole episode to this, vitamin D with K, or just straight up vitamin D if you're taking anticoagulants like Coumadin or Plavix or something like that. Great for your immune system to keep you out of trouble so you're not in trouble. Now, what do you do if you're in trouble? Do you get the COVID test? Do you run to the ER? Do you take your temperature? Do you do those things? Well, when we're taking care of people, we have this line of clinical decision making, we would do a test. If you want to do a test, it's to see if you should do this or you should do that, one or the other, and figure out what the answer is on the test. So I always talk to people about, and this is recent research, maybe you don't know this, but for instance, when your kids get fever, we've been taught for generations you should give your kids antipyretics, Tylenol or ibuprofen, to mitigate the fever so they don't have a seizure. Well, they just studied tens of thousands of cases and found that it makes no difference. In other words, don't give your kids Tylenol and ibuprofen just because the thermometer says so. You may want to use that if they're uncomfortable and whining and they say they hurt. It's not okay if you're leaving kids to hurt. But because you have a thermometer and you stick it in your, and the thermometer says 101, that's not a reason to medicate your kids. I know that's how we grew up. That's how our parents grew up. We're generations into this right now. So going to be really hard to undo that. I know that. You haven't heard that, but that is the current research. You can look it up. It was out in February of 2023. Tens of thousands of cases. It has no bearing on whether your kid has a seizure or not, whether you give them Tylenol or not. So anyway, so what do you do? If you're sick, all right. Well, you don't feel good. One, I don't know, stay home, go to bed. Don't take a COVID test to see if you should stay home. If you don't feel good, stay home. Go to bed, heal. Sleep is how you heal, by the way. You want to raise your temperature. Your body gets a fever to heal. That's how it fights. If you're going to take Tylenol and ibuprofen, you're going to be sick longer because you're interfering with your body's ability to fight it. You're going to be sick longer. So, yeah, don't take those things. If you're not sleeping, I don't know, if you're coughing and being miserable, you can take worst case scenario. If you're not going to sleep, here's the problem. Here's kind of the line for me. If your kid's up all night not sleeping because he's hacking and coughing, he's not going to heal because he's not sleeping. If you have to use something, expectorant is it. That's kind of the line. It's a single thing, expectorant. It's not the NyQuil with 7 things at once and Tylenol and anti-congestion and antihistamine, all those things. Don't do that. If the problem is you're coughing and you're not sleeping, well, make the cough productive and sleep for a couple hours. It's not ideal, but it's a crisis. If you're not sleeping, that's a crisis of its own. For adults, whatever, you know what, go to sleep tomorrow, go to the next day. It's not gonna be miserable. Unless you're, in a wedding or something, just don't go to work. Do you need to go to the ER? Do you need to go get a strep test? Do you need to go get a COVID test? Well, here's the results on that. If you take an antibiotic, for ear infections and strep and things like that, you're more likely to be sick 4 months later than if you didn't. And the reason is because now you're killing off your microbiome that actually fights bacteria for you. The next one, and they're everywhere. They're not going away. They're always out there. They're not going away. You're going to encounter them tomorrow whether you took the antibiotic or not, but now you're going to do so with a destroyed immune system. So is today the day that you feel you're going to die from an infection. Well, if you think you're going to die, well, okay, that's a reasonable use of antibiotics. You know, you know very well more people died in World War I from infection than bullets, and it was antibiotics that actually changed the math on that. But we're using them now because we have fevers. We're not using them because we have gangrene in our foot. We're not using them like that at all anymore. They're well overused in our food supply. They're everywhere. And if you want to keep your immune system intact, you really need to try and avoid those things and figure out some way to get through the infection. And you get to the other side. If you get sick, you get to the other side without it, you are now healthier because you've developed the immunity against that. They've shown years ago, this is in the 90s, they've shown that kids with ear infections, if you gave them amoxicillin, they were 4 to 6 times more likely to have another ear infection because they got amoxicillin than the kids who got nothing. And yet that is how the game was played in every pediatric office throughout the country for the last 30 years. That's just how the game is played. Because the doctors would be sued if your kid, God forbid, would be so unhealthy they couldn't recover from an ear infection. They would be sued if they did not write that amoxicillin prescription. So that's why that happened. But it isn't really the best thing for you to do that. So the cold and flu season is really about babysitting your immune system. Don't throw a bunch of sugar and junk food at it. Start using things to help your immune system. Antioxidants, vitamin C, resveratrol, NAC, most important, vitamin D, probiotics, and things to keep inflammation at bay, curcumin and fish oil. Those are the tools. So that's how you do it. It's pretty easy. It's not complicated at all. So hope that was helpful for you. I'm Dr. Barrett from Vibrant Life Center. If you need our help, it's 651-777-3611. We'll talk to you soon.